You know what? Most people believe that getting rich is hard, that it's complicated, that it's reserved for some lucky few who were born into the right family, went to the right school, or had the right connections. But I'm here to smash that belief today, because the truth is this: getting rich is super easy if you're willing to think differently, act differently, and demand more of yourself. The problem isn't money. The problem is the way people think about money. They see money as something distant, something that lives outside of them, something controlled by others. But let me tell you, money is a byproduct of value. And creating value is the easiest thing you can do in this world if you commit to solving problems, meeting needs, and serving people at the highest level. Think about it. Every single dollar in your pocket is proof that you delivered value to someone. That's it. That's the entire formula. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. It's about identifying where people hurt, where people are stuck, where people need a solution, and then stepping up to be the one who delivers it. You do that consistently, relentlessly, and guess what? Wealth comes chasing you. But here's the real key. Most people never get rich because they don't believe it's possible for them. They buy into the story that says, "It's too hard," or "I don't have the skills," or "I wasn't born with the right background." That's garbage. The only thing standing between you and wealth is the belief system you've bought into. Change your story and you change your life. Getting rich is easy when you decide that wealth is not optional, it's your standard. When you raise your standard, when you refuse to settle for a paycheck that barely covers your bills, when you decide that financial freedom is your birthright, everything shifts. Your brain begins to search for opportunities. Your energy multiplies and you attract the right people and the right circumstances into your life. Look around. People are getting rich every day. Many of them are no smarter than you. Many of them started with less than you. The only difference is they chose to step into the game while others sat on the sidelines. They stopped waiting for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect conditions, and they acted. They made mistakes, they learned, they adapted, and they kept moving. And here's the secret. Wealth is not just about money. It's about freedom. It's about choice. It's about waking up in the morning and saying, "Today, I do what I want, with the people I want, in the way I want." That's what wealth buys you. And if you think that's only for other people, you've already lost. So let's decide right here, right now, getting rich is not hard. It's easy. It's easy because you are resourceful, you are capable, and you are relentless. It's easy because the marketplace rewards those who show up with courage, creativity, and commitment. It's easy because you already have within you everything you need to create the life you dream about. The question is, will you claim it? Will you stop playing small? Stop making excuses. Stop telling yourself the lie that money is hard to get and start stepping into the reality that wealth is yours to create. Because the truth is, getting rich is super easy, but only for those who decide it is. Wealth is a mindset before it's a bank account. And that truth is something most people never understand because they are trained from childhood to see money as something external, something far away, something controlled by forces outside of their influence. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you heard people say things like, "I can't afford that," or "money doesn't grow on trees," or "only lucky people get rich"? These phrases are repeated over and over until they become unconscious programs, silently shaping how people think, act, and behave when it comes to money. But the reality is, money doesn't start in your pocket. It starts in your mind. The way you think about money creates the behaviors you take, and the behaviors you take create the results you experience. If you think money is scarce, you'll act from fear, hesitation, and doubt, and those actions will keep you stuck in scarcity. If you believe money is abundant, that wealth is something you can create through your resourcefulness, creativity, and value. You'll begin to see opportunities everywhere. The difference between a wealthy person and a broke person is rarely intelligence, education, or even luck. The real difference is the internal story they are running about what's possible for them. A wealthy person believes in abundance, believes in growth, and sees challenges as opportunities to expand. A broke person, on the other hand, sees obstacles as roadblocks, problems as permanent, and money as something they'll never truly have control over. It's not about how much money is in their account right now. It's about the mindset that drives every decision. If someone with a rich mindset loses everything, they will find a way to rebuild. They will network, innovate, hustle, and create value until money flows back to them. But if someone with a poor mindset suddenly receives wealth through inheritance, lottery, or luck, they often lose it quickly because their thinking doesn't match the level of the money they've received. Your external world will always be a reflection of your internal world. If you have patterns of doubt, fear, or limitation around money, you'll find that no matter how hard you work, you'll hit ceilings you can't break through. That's because your beliefs act like a thermostat, setting the temperature of your financial life. You can work harder, push harder, grind more hours. But if your thermostat is set low, you'll sabotage or block the flow of wealth without even realizing it. On the other hand, if your thermostat is set high, if your beliefs are tuned into abundance, you'll constantly find ways to elevate your life, to grow, and to attract opportunities others don't even see. The key is to understand that changing your mindset is not about repeating empty affirmations. It's about rewiring the beliefs that live deep inside of you, beliefs you may not even know you've been carrying, for example. If you were raised in an environment where money was always a struggle, you probably picked up the belief that money equals stress. You watched your parents fight over bills. You heard relatives complain about not having enough, and those experiences left an imprint. So when you grow older, even if you start to earn more, you may unconsciously sabotage yourself because your nervous system associates money with tension, conflict, or fear. But if you shift that mindset, if you decide that money is energy, that it is a tool, that it is abundant and can flow into your life as easily as air, you begin to act differently. You start seeing money as a friend, not an enemy. You see wealth as a natural reward for service, not something unattainable. That one shift changes how you speak, how you walk into opportunities, how you negotiate, how you invest, and how you create. Wealth begins the moment you decide to raise your identity. If you see yourself as someone who is always struggling, you'll unconsciously attract situations that match that identity. But if you see yourself as a creator of value, as someone who can serve, innovate, and grow, your entire world changes. Suddenly, you start asking different questions. How can I serve more people? How can I solve bigger problems? How can I increase my skills so I become indispensable in the marketplace? Those questions lead to actions that generate wealth. Poor mindsets ask, why is life unfair? Why can't I catch a break? Rich mindsets ask, how can I make life better? How can I create my own break? That's why wealth is mental first. You don't get wealthy by waiting for a bigger paycheck. You get wealthy by becoming the kind of person who attracts opportunities, who creates value, and who multiplies resources. The world rewards those who think differently. Look at entrepreneurs who started with nothing but a vision. They didn't have piles of money when they began. What they had was a mindset that said, I will find a way. That belief system drove them to stay up late, to learn new skills, to face rejection, to keep pushing until they figured it out. Their bank account grew because their mindset was already rich. And here's what you must realize. A rich mindset is available to anyone who chooses it. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter how broke you are right now. If you shift the way you think, you've already taken the first step to shifting your financial destiny. You don't need to wait for a miracle. You need to transform your mental operating system. And the truth is, the moment you believe wealth is possible for you, your brain begins to work differently. It starts spotting opportunities that were invisible before. It begins connecting dots that others can't see. It gives you the courage to take action when others freeze in fear. This is why two people can look at the exact same situation, say a recession, and one sees doom while the other sees opportunity. The situation is the same, but the mindset is different. One person shrinks, the other expands. One loses everything, the other builds wealth. It's never about the circumstances. It's about the lens through which you view the circumstances. That is why wealth is always a mindset before it's a bank account. Until you raise the level of your thinking, you will always struggle no matter how much money flows in. But once your thinking shifts into alignment with abundance, once you decide to become the kind of person who creates, who solves, who grows, who adds massive value, you'll find that money becomes not something you chase, but something you attract naturally, and consistently money flows to those who create massive value. And this truth is one of the simplest yet most misunderstood principles of wealth. Too many people spend their entire lives chasing money directly, thinking if they just work longer hours, if they just grind harder, if they just beg for raises, money will come. But money doesn't respond to desperation, it responds to value. Money is nothing more than proof that you solved a problem for someone else. Every dollar is a thank you note, a certificate of appreciation for the value you've provided to another human being. When you begin to see money this way, everything about how you approach life changes. Because instead of asking, how do I get more money? You start asking, how do I create more value? And that single shift in focus is the gateway to unlimited wealth. Think about the most successful people in the world. Whether they are entrepreneurs, inventors, entertainers, or investors, they all became wealthy because they provided massive value to millions, sometimes billions of people. They didn't just think about themselves. They thought about the marketplace. They thought about what people needed, what people were struggling with, what people were craving, and then they built something to meet that need. They didn't chase money. They chased impact. And in doing so, money chased them. Wealth is a byproduct of contribution. The more you give in terms of service, innovation, and creativity, the more wealth flows back to you, because people happily exchange money for value when they see that it improves their lives. The problem is that most people are stuck in a transactional mindset. They think, I work this many hours, so I should get this much money. That's why so many people feel stuck. They think their income is limited by time, when in reality, income is only limited by value. You can only work so many hours in a day, but you can create limitless value. You can design a product that solves a problem for thousands of people. You can create a service that makes someone's life easier, healthier, or more enjoyable. You can share knowledge, build communities, and connect people in ways that generate opportunities. That is value, and value is scalable. When you focus on scaling value, wealth flows to you in ways that working harder never could. Look at the difference between someone who earns minimum wage and someone who earns millions. It's not that one works infinitely harder than the other. In fact, the person earning minimum wage often works physically harder, longer hours, doing grueling labor. The difference is that the person earning millions is creating leverage through value. They're not paid for their time, they're paid for their impact. Their ideas, their systems, their solutions touch more lives, solve bigger problems, and therefore generate more money. Once you understand this, you stop trading time for money and start creating value for money. That is the turning point of wealth creation. It's easy to believe that the world is unfair, that wealth is just a matter of luck, but luck is not the foundation of lasting wealth. You can win the lottery, you can inherit money, but if you haven't built the mindset and skills to create value, that wealth will vanish. The people who stay rich, who grow richer, are the ones who continually ask themselves, how do I create more value today? That question drives their innovation, their risk-taking, their creativity, and their persistence. They know that the more lives they touch, the more wealth naturally flows back to them. The person who solves a problem for one person makes a living. The person who solves a problem for 1,000 people builds a business. The person who solves a problem for millions creates a fortune. Money doesn't disappear. It circulates. It moves from those who consume value to those who create it. Every time you spend money, you are rewarding someone for providing value to you. That coffee you bought rewarded someone who figured out how to serve you convenience and taste. That phone in your pocket rewarded a company that solved your need for communication and connection. That app you use daily rewarded a creator who built something useful. Every dollar you spend is a vote for value. When you understand this, you realize that if you want more money, you must give people more reasons to vote for you by creating things that matter to them. The beauty of this principle is that it puts the power back in your hands. You don't have to wait for the government, for your boss, or for the economy to decide your worth. You decide your worth by deciding the level of value you will bring to the table. If you want to double your income, don't wait for permission. Double your value. Learn more, serve more, innovate more, solve bigger problems, and your financial life will expand. People are always hungry for solutions, always searching for someone to make their lives better. The ones who step up to meet that hunger are the ones who become wealthy. And here's the thing, creating massive value is not just about money, it's about fulfillment. When you dedicate yourself to serving others, to making their lives easier, more joyful, more productive, you feel a sense of purpose that money alone could never provide. Wealth without value feels empty, but wealth created through contribution feels alive. It gives meaning to your success because you know it's not just about you. It's about everyone whose life has been touched by what you've created. That is why the wealthiest people are often the most driven, because they are not just chasing numbers, they are chasing impact. So when you look at your own life and your own financial goals, stop asking, how do I get rich? And start asking, how do I serve at a higher level? How do I create something that makes a real difference? Because the truth is simple and unshakable. Money flows to those who create massive value. And if you make that your obsession, you'll never have to worry about wealth finding its way to you. Your standards determine your financial destiny. And that principle is one that governs every part of life, whether people realize it or not. Standards are invisible lines you draw for yourself, the minimum level you're willing to accept. They are not wishes. They are not dreams. They are non-negotiables. If your standard is to always have enough money to just get by, then that's exactly what you'll get, just enough to scrape by. If your standard is financial freedom, if your standard is abundance, if your standard is living life on your own terms, then your behaviors, decisions, and actions will rise to match that standard. The truth is, wealth isn't about luck or chance. It's about what you refuse to settle for. Most people are not broke because they lack opportunities. They are broke because they tolerate being broke. They've accepted stress about bills as normal. They've accepted debt as a way of life. They've accepted the idea that struggling is just part of existence. And once something becomes acceptable, it becomes permanent. Standards shape habits. Habits shape results, and results shape destiny. If someone has a low standard, they'll put up with low pay. They'll put up with jobs that drain them. They'll put up with an environment that doesn't challenge them to grow. But if someone raises their standard and says, this is not acceptable for me anymore, I will not live like this, suddenly their whole psychology changes. They begin to look for solutions, for new opportunities, for ways to expand, because their mind cannot tolerate staying at a level below their new standard. Think about athletes at the highest level. They don't just dream of winning. They have a standard of excellence that demands they train harder, eat better, recover smarter, and discipline themselves beyond what the average person would do. That standard elevates them above everyone else. Wealth works the same way. The person who makes wealth a standard in their life, not a wish, automatically begins to shift everything, how they think, how they act, how they invest their time, how they manage their resources. They won't waste hours binge watching shows because their standard doesn't allow them to sacrifice growth for temporary entertainment. They won't settle for jobs or businesses that keep them small because their standard demands growth and expansion. They won't tolerate financial ignorance because their standard pushes them to learn, to study, to master the game of money. Your income will always meet your standards, not your desires. You might desire more money. You might even dream of becoming rich. But if your standard is to live paycheck to paycheck, that's where you'll stay. Desires exist in the world of would be nice. Standards exist in the world of must. When something becomes a must for you, you find a way. If your standard is to never let your family go hungry, you'll figure out how to feed them no matter what. If your standard is to never live in debt, you'll make the sacrifices necessary to stay free from it. If your standard is to create wealth and freedom, you'll attract the ideas, the mentors, the opportunities, and the drive to make it happen. People underestimate how powerful a standard is because it seems invisible, but it's the quiet force directing every decision of your life. The people who build wealth are not always the smartest, but they almost always have the highest standards for themselves. They refuse to stay in environments that limit them. They refuse to settle for mediocrity. They refuse to tolerate being uninformed about money. They decide, and that decision becomes a line in the sand. That's the moment life begins to change, because raising your standard forces you to raise your identity. You can't see yourself as someone average anymore. You must begin to see yourself as someone capable of more, someone worthy of more, someone destined for more. And when your identity shifts, your behaviors follow. Suddenly, you're reading books on wealth. You're surrounding yourself with ambitious people. You're taking risks. You're building skills. You're speaking differently, moving differently, thinking differently, because your standard demands it. There is a deep truth about human beings. We will always find a way to live up to our standards, and we will always find a way to sabotage ourselves if we rise above them. That's why so many people who win the lottery end up broke again. They never raised their internal standard. The money was temporary, but their standard of living poor was permanent, and eventually they fell back to it. On the flip side, someone who has a high financial standard may lose everything in a bad investment, but they'll rebuild it quickly because their standard won't let them stay down. They know wealth is their baseline, and they won't stop until they restore it. That's why some people bounce back from setbacks while others stay defeated. The difference is not intelligence, it's standards. If you want to change your financial destiny, you have to stop negotiating with your standards. Too many people say they want wealth but tolerate behaviors that destroy it. They tolerate overspending, procrastination, lack of learning, staying comfortable instead of growing. Raising your standard means cutting off all possibility of living below it. It means saying to yourself, I will never again accept this level for my life. That's not motivation. That's not hype. That's a decision. The moment you make that decision, the world begins to shift. Opportunities that were invisible before start to show up because your mind is scanning for them. People begin to treat you differently because they can feel your certainty. And most importantly, you begin to treat yourself differently. You respect your own time, your own energy, your own talents in a way you never did before. Wealth responds to people who refuse to settle. It responds to people who make freedom, growth, and abundance their minimum requirement. Once you set that level, everything else in your life must rise to meet it. because your standards determine your financial destiny. Action beats perfection. Start before you're ready, because waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, or the perfect conditions is the single biggest trap that keeps people stuck in financial mediocrity. Too many people think they need to know everything before they take a step. They want all the details figured out, all the risks removed, every answer handed to them before they move forward. And while they wait, opportunities pass them by, momentum slips away, and someone else who is bold enough to take action steps into the space they left open. Wealth doesn't reward the one who thinks the longest. It rewards the one who moves the fastest with courage and adjusts along the way. You don't get rich by overthinking. You get rich by acting, failing, learning, and acting again. Perfection is an illusion. It doesn't exist in business. It doesn't exist in investing. It doesn't exist in opportunities. The world changes too quickly for perfection to ever arrive. Those who wait for it spend their lives preparing and never producing. Those who move without it learn through the process and end up miles ahead. Think of every successful entrepreneur, investor, or innovator. None of them had all the answers when they started. They had an idea, a little bit of belief, a willingness to risk, and then they acted. They learned more in 1 month of doing than others learn in years of planning. Action is the real teacher, and money flows to those who are willing to get their hands dirty, to stumble, to adjust, to evolve through experience. There is something magical that happens when you take action. You activate momentum. Momentum is a force that multiplies results, but it can never show up in the planning stage. It only shows up when you step into the arena, when you commit, when you put yourself on the line. Momentum builds confidence, and confidence builds more action. And that cycle compounds into results. The first action may be small, it may even feel insignificant, but that one step breaks the chain of hesitation. That's when your brain begins to open doors you couldn't see before. When you're moving, ideas appear, connections happen, doors open. When you're stagnant, nothing happens, because life does not reward the one who stands still. People waste years of their life saying they're getting ready. They want the right business partner, the right course, the right amount of savings, the right environment. And while they wait, time slips through their fingers. The truth is, no one ever feels fully ready. Every successful person started scared, uncertain, unprepared. The difference is that they acted anyway. They trusted they could figure it out along the way. That trust is what separates those who build wealth from those who never escape mediocrity. If you wait until you're confident, you'll never start, because confidence doesn't come first. It comes after action. You earn confidence by taking steps, proving to yourself you can handle it, seeing evidence that you can grow, adapt, and succeed. Failure becomes your ally when you embrace action. Every mistake teaches you something you couldn't have learned from theory. You get feedback, you refine, you get sharper. The one who fails quickly and frequently ends up mastering the game far faster than the one who spends years avoiding failure. Wealth is not built in a straight line. It's built through trial, through resilience, through persistence. Every wealthy person has a trail of failures behind them, but what they also have is the wisdom those failures produced. They didn't fear mistakes, they feared staying the same. That's the mindset of a wealthy person. They understand that failure is tuition for success. The cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of trying and stumbling. The marketplace doesn't reward perfection, it rewards speed and value. Think about companies that dominate their industries. Most didn't launch with flawless products. They launched, they tested, they improved. They let real-world results guide them instead of waiting in the shadows until everything was perfect. They gained customers, feedback, and momentum because they acted first. By the time competitors finally finished planning, the first movers had already captured the market. The same principle applies to your financial life. The sooner you step into action, whether it's starting a side hustle, making your first investment, launching a business, or building new skills, the sooner you start building results. The longer you wait, the more opportunities you give away to someone else's action also reveals your true potential. Many people underestimate what they are capable of because they've never tested themselves. They sit in comfort, imagining failure, doubting their own abilities. But the moment they take a step, they begin to surprise themselves. They discover strengths they didn't know they had, resourcefulness they didn't believe was in them, courage that only emerges when it's demanded. Wealth requires this discovery process. No one knows all their capabilities from the start. You uncover them through experience, and experience only comes from action. One of the greatest lies people tell themselves is that they need more knowledge before they can start. But knowledge without action is useless. Reading books, attending seminars, watching videos, all of it means nothing if you don't put it into motion. The wealthiest people are not the ones who know the most. They're the ones who apply what they know the fastest. Knowledge becomes power only when it's executed. A small action taken today beats a perfect plan delayed for years. Wealth doesn't wait for the person who studies, it waits for the person who executes. The truth is, you will never be fully ready, and you don't need to be. You just need to move. Start messy, start scared, start small, but start. Action will teach you more than hesitation ever could. And once you begin, you'll realize that progress, not perfection, is the true path to wealth. Action beats perfection every single time because perfection is just a disguise for fear, while action is the doorway to growth, opportunity, and financial freedom. Freedom, not money, is the real definition of wealth, because at the core of every financial dream is not paper, not numbers on a screen, but the ability to live life on your terms. People chase money thinking it will give them happiness, but what they're really craving is freedom. The freedom to wake up when they want, to do work they love, to spend time with the people who matter most, to travel, to explore, to create, to contribute. The tragedy is that many chase money so blindly that they forget to build the freedom that wealth is supposed to provide, and they end up trapped in golden cages, surrounded by possessions, but still controlled by stress, schedules, and obligations. True wealth is measured not by how much you accumulate, but by how much choice and control you have over your life. Money itself is neutral. It's just a tool. But what that tool buys you is priceless. It buys you back your time. It buys you experiences. It buys you peace of mind. Imagine for a moment having enough resources so that you never again have to make a decision based on fear, scarcity, or survival. Imagine no longer having to stay in a toxic job just to pay the bills, no longer having to sacrifice time with your family because you can't afford to take a break, no longer waking up with anxiety about debt or bills. That is freedom, and that is the essence of real wealth. People don't want money for its own sake. They want it because of the options it creates, the power it gives them to live without chains. The irony is that there are countless people who have millions in the bank but are still broke in spirit. They have money but no freedom. Their businesses own them. Their schedules imprison them. Their obligations consume them. They've built wealth in appearance but not in reality because they still lack the most valuable resource of all, time. Wealth without freedom is poverty disguised. On the other hand, there are people who may not be billionaires, but live richly because they've designed their life in a way that prioritizes freedom over accumulation. They've structured their income so it works for them. They've invested wisely, they've eliminated unnecessary expenses, and they've learned that true luxury is not another car or another watch. It's waking up and being able to choose how to live each day. When you start to understand that freedom is the real prize, your approach to money shifts. Instead of just asking how to make more, you start asking how to use money in a way that buys back your life. You begin to focus on building systems, creating passive income, investing in assets that generate cash flow, developing skills that give you leverage. You stop thinking about working harder and start thinking about working smarter, because wealth without time to enjoy it is meaningless. Real success is when your money works for you instead of you working for money. Real success is when your calendar reflects your values, not just your obligations. Real success is when you can say yes to what excites you and no to what drains you without hesitation or fear. This is why financial independence is so powerful. It's not about having billions. It's about reaching the point where your needs and lifestyle are fully supported without you being chained to constant labor. At that point, you get to create from a place of joy, not necessity. You get to work because you want to, not because you have to. You get to pursue projects, businesses, or passions that matter to you without worrying about how to keep the lights on. That is freedom, and it is the truest form of wealth because it gives you back the one thing money alone can't buy: time. Once time is gone, it's gone forever. So designing your financial life to protect and expand your time is the smartest decision you'll ever make. Another truth is that freedom gives you the space to live authentically. Many people compromise their values, their dreams, their creativity, and even their integrity just to earn a paycheck. They silence their voice, shrink their potential, and accept mediocrity because they feel trapped. But when you achieve financial freedom, you reclaim your authenticity. You can speak your truth without fear of losing income. You can create without worrying about whether it will sell. You can choose to walk away from what no longer serves you. Freedom allows you to align your life with your deepest values, and that alignment is the foundation of fulfillment. Money without alignment creates emptiness, but freedom with alignment creates a life of meaning. Chasing freedom instead of money also shifts how you experience success. Instead of endlessly pursuing more, you begin to pursue better quality of life, better relationships, Better health, better experiences. You stop measuring success by the size of your bank account and start measuring it by the size of your joy, your peace, your contribution. That doesn't mean money isn't important. It absolutely is, but it's a means, not the end. It's a servant, not a master. When you put freedom first, money becomes a tool to design a life you love instead of a trap that enslaves you. The path to this kind of wealth is available to anyone who decides to prioritize freedom over status. It begins with clear choices, reducing debt, living below your means while you build, investing wisely, creating multiple streams of income, and always asking the question, will this decision give me more freedom or less? Every purchase, every commitment, every investment is either moving you closer to freedom or chaining you further away from it. When you begin to evaluate life through that lens, you make different decisions. You stop chasing things that impress others and start building a life that liberates you. That's when wealth becomes not just financial, but emotional, spiritual, and physical freedom is the ultimate measure of success, because at the end of your life, you won't count the money you made, you'll count the moments you lived. You'll remember the trips you took, the time you spent with loved ones, the projects you poured your soul into, the causes you contributed to, the adventures you embraced. That's the real scoreboard of life. And money, if used correctly, can give you the ability to fill that scoreboard with everything that matters most. But if money is pursued without the awareness that freedom is the real goal, you can end up with all the numbers and none of the life. That's why freedom, not money, is and always will be the real definition of wealth.